I thought it was about time for another thought of the day video. I created this category of videos just as an opportunity to share just whatever it is that is on my mind or any thought that I think may be helpful to process out loud with others. And one of the things I thought would kind of spark those ideas are the things that I'm reading, the things that I'm listening to, the things that I'm watching. Just different things as it does for all of us that kind of pass across your literal screen or your metaphorical screen of your life, the things that you just encounter and the thoughts that they spark. And so I've been having fun just thinking about those things. A lot of times, the books that I'm reading will um, spark thoughts for the podcast. Currently working on some session six material based on some of the books I've been reading, and that's great. I think I hinted at in our last newsletter in January. I think I hinted at the idea of doing a YouTube video series that would kind of be my own commentary and thoughts on The Chosen TV series that a lot of you are familiar with. I get that question all the time. What do you think about The Chosen? I was looking forward to doing that. I still may do that on video. But Brent and I have decided to actually include it in session six. We're going to do a series of Brent and I both just kind of going through the Chosen series and adding our comments, things we love, things we hate. Not a whole lot of things that we hate about it. Much longer list of the things we appreciate and love about it. So we'll be able to go through that on session six. It'll be a lot more fun to do that with Brent and I than it would be just to listen to me give my thoughts on it. So I'm looking forward to that. So I teased that, and then I don't know if we'll actually deliver here on YouTube. You might actually have to go to session six eventually and find it there. But today, one of the things that I had on my list of thought of the day content was not too long ago. I finally got around to watching the documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. I had seen a lot of that flying around about the middle, maybe fall of last year in 2020. I don't know when it was actually released, I'm not even sure. But I was just seeing a lot of people talk about it. A lot of times I'm either on the front end, I'm either an early adopter, or if I don't make it on the early adopter side, I'm usually a late adopter. And so it just took me a little bit to finally catch up and to everybody else on that one. But watched it recently, and there were some things in there that I think a majority of the content uh, there were some things that were probably overly dramatized, a little over dramatic about some things. There are some things that there's definitely some nuance here or there, or further conversation, or maybe it's not quite as exactly. So there's of course all those things. It's always the case. And then there were a lot of things that I thought, man, hopefully this isn't surprising and shocking too many of us. Um, like if we're surprised that they've been using our, tracking the things we click on and the way that we post so that they can advertise to us and sell that information. Like, hopefully we're not totally shocked at that. Um, I mean, if we are, I question our ability to think critically and pay attention, but maybe to the extent or maybe how systematized it is. Some of those things. But a lot of that wasn't totally shocking to me. I didn't walk away from um, that documentary just floored or wanting to quit all my social media accounts and to log off of Facebook forever. Um, Although I understand many that I had friends that did. That are still off of Facebook and much of social media. I understand that. I can appreciate that. There are some of us that really struggle with how we engage the medium of social media. Uh, I was just talking to somebody the other day that talked about just how emotionally tied up they are in social media. And our personalities are different. Our brain chemistry is different. Our generational like just the age demographic we fall in and the way we interact with the internet is different. And so I can understand that. I can appreciate people that are able to look at themselves with some self-reflection and say, I'm going to step away from this. That makes sense. I'm not against that. I didn't personally walk away from the documentary in this sense of low grade or high grade panic, wanting to just pull the cord on everything. I've worked really hard, hopefully to just have a lot of wisdom in how I use social media. I've always been a little interested in how easily, like why we so easily just post what I would call public opinion. We just create posts just to share our opinions, and most of the time not in ways that I would consider to be useful, just in ways that invite disagreement, and it just invites provocation. The way we use social media is highly provocative on a personal level. I've just never understood that. I've never understood why people get involved in comment threads arguing like we look like everybody. Like even like if there's a right and a wrong, like it doesn't even matter in those comment threads. Like we just look like idiots. And I've never quite understood much of that. So I've always used social media for what I thought it was good for sharing, for sharing information. There is a proper place to share public opinion, especially if you have a voice. I mean, here I am making a YouTube video sharing my opinion about things. There are ways to write blog posts, probably an outdated form of communication, or to make YouTube videos, or to put it in a proper place and then share it on social media. Social media has been a great place to share information about events that are happening, about things that we're posting or creating. It's a great way to spread, to share information, to make announcements. It's way more effective than newsletters or church bulletins or social media can be so great, but we use it for this interesting these personal dynamics. I'm no sociologist, so I don't even know what sits behind all that, but nevertheless, that's just always been some of my thoughts on social media. However, there were two things about that documentary that did get my attention. And maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised as I was by that. One of those was the idea of search engines and how, like, let's say you use, I'm a Google user. I use Google as my typical search engine. I had no idea how the algorithms were personally adjusted to my own search habits to give me the results that I want to see. I think I knew that was somewhat like, I didn't think Google was just like not customized, not personalized, like there were no algorithms involved. I don't think I realized to the extent at which the algorithms were so personally designed for you as an individual. And I just found that to be so interesting. I've had conversations before where people are like, you talked about this. I can't find anything about that. Can you give me your source? And I'm like, man, just Google it. Like, it's right there. People are like, no, it's not there. And so I Google it, and like my first 7 results are the very thing they're looking for. And I've always like written back to people, if you just Google it, it's like the first 7 things that come up. And now I have a much better understanding of my Google search engine. It has learned my habits enough that it finds and gives me the results that I want to see. So I do find historical, contextual, Jewish sources much easier than somebody who has not been doing this, working in this field every single day for the last 12 years. Your Google results are not the same as mine. They're actually radically different. I did not. That was interesting to me. Very practical and useful. Like not like oh no, what's the cultural result? I just thought that was very helpful for me to realize as I talk to so many people who are trying to figure out how to find the things we talk about on the podcast, how to do their own research, and how to do it well, because the internet is just a mess. And you have to know what you're looking for. You have to be able to discern like what's garbage and what's gold, and it's hard to tell. And you just learn that over time. There's no quick way to if you drop that in the comments, like, so how do we do that, Marty? Well, there's no quick way of doing that. At least I haven't found some quick shortcut. I've just had to learn it over time, continue to read, continue to study, continue to expand my bibliography. And the more I do that, the more I know which group of people, which circles of academia that I'm turning to, that I trust, which systems that are my sources. So it happens over time, but the idea that those algorithms are impacting the search results that dramatically, I guess that's somewhat alarming. I should say it's not alarming at all, but it was more than anything just practical for me. And I guess as a side note to that, one of the things that I think I was picking up and hearing in that documentary is that those algorithms aren't necessarily like they had the fun little cutaways where you had these three people kind of controlling everything. It's not that the algorithms are directly controlled by people. The algorithms kind of run themselves, and they keep, like, the algorithms themselves are this non-animated, non-human, it's just an algorithm, and it does its own thing, and because of that, that's why it continues to spin into these what we might call dangerous places, because the algorithm just keeps building on itself and keeps refining what it is and what it does. It can't help but do that. It's designed to do that. I guess that's a side note. Maybe that's the alarm, part of the alarm in that one. But I will share with you, just to close here, the part of the documentary that I find the most alarming. And that is because of all the things that we've been talking about. The internet, particularly social media, and even our search engines and everything else, the internet that we consume as consumers is fine-tuned to give us what we want in order to keep us coming back, driven largely by advertising and the things that are making money, driven almost entirely by that. But the world of the internet that we interact with is custom designed to give us what we want to see and hear and experience. And so it creates very directly what we often call echo chambers. The impact of that, like, I just was so struck by, if you've ever sat there, and especially if you are involved in the church world at all, you have people that you're in fellowship with that see the world in a radically different way than you. If you're progressive, you have conservative friends, and vice versa. If you're Republican, you know of people who are Democrats, and vice versa. Like, whoever you are, there are, whatever the conversation is, like, you rub shoulders with, and you interact with people who are from the other perspective, whatever we're talking about. And if you've had those interactions, you walk away from that going, like, how can those people be so stupid? And we all do it, no matter what side we're on, because we walk away going, I can't believe I thought they were smarter than that. Have they not been paying attention? And what's the problem that I think the documentary is trying to let us in on is that they have been paying attention. We all have been, but we're only paying attention. If we're not more aware and more intentional, we're only paying attention to the things that show up in our echo chamber. And so you're only hearing one voice. You're only hearing one perspective. And it's the perspective that you want to hear. It's the perspective you keep going back for. It's the perspective that you keep clicking deeper into. And so all the algorithms, all the media, not the media, all of the media the mediums that you interact with are designed to take you further, to surround you with more, to take you deeper into that one perspective. So no, that other group of people have not been paying attention to the things you've been paying attention to. That other group of people has been paying attention to all the things that you have no idea about. And of course we think like, oh, but no, but you don't understand, Marty. My pool is the right pool. The other pool is fake news. The other pool is alternative facts. The other pool is, but my pool is accurate. And there's some great objective conversations to be had about many of these things. But the fact that we are so, unless we're more aware and unless we're intentional about it, we are surrounded by our own echo chambers, and it is creating a world. I'm old enough that I can remember being a child before the internet, like having it in my house. I can remember a world before Facebook, for sure. And it feels to me like our world on almost every level: spiritual discourse, political discourse, just relational discourse, ethnic discourse, racial discourse. Any of these, like, we're just getting to a place where the language is more and more bitter and angry and dangerous and destructive, and we can't talk. We're getting more and more polarized. And I've had that sense, and I'm like, man, what's going wrong with humanity? And I think there's an element to the humanity question, and yet it's all being fed and cultivated by the world that we interact with as internet consumers every day. Again, for me, the point of this is not to walk away and unplug myself of all media. The point of this is not to trash Facebook and jump off of it. That's not necessarily the point for me. The point for me is to become more aware of who we are in the world that we're experiencing, and then combating that experience, like the negative parts of that. If I'm in an echo chamber, I'm going to have to be intentional about getting out of that echo chamber. If the people that I know, if the people that I fellowship with, if the people that I rub shoulders with, if they're in a different echo chamber and they're not seeing the things that I see every day, they're not listening to the things that I listen to every day, they're not watching the same videos that I'm watching every day, like, of course I gravitate to the pools of people that are sharing the same experiences, that are consuming the same material. But it also causes me to, like, who are these idiots? It causes that polarization. It causes that the opposite of fellowship. This is actually very anti-kingdom. It's very anti-church. It's very anti-Eucharist. This whole idea. It's like, and forget about, like, the unity of our nation. As a Christian, very anti-gospel, and the work of the kingdom demands that I become more aware and intentional of this, and fight this tendency that media and the consumption of whatever kind of good, it's pulling me apart. I have to counteract that with my own intention, with my own commitment to something better and bigger. And so there's two words that I've just been thinking a lot about, two words that rise to the surface for me. One of those words is curiosity. Curiosity. It's just becoming one of my favorite words. I know it's kind of already a buzzword, whatever. I'm not really interested in being trendy. That word for me works. We need to be more curious. We need to incentivize, especially in areas of faith, curiosity. Curiosity. To be curious. To be curious does not mean you're not convicted. To be curious does not mean that there aren't things that you know. Of course there are things that you know. And of course you have convictions. And of course you can even be deeply opinionated, and yet you can still be curious. Why are we not more curious? Why are we so ready to give statements and opinions and less ready to ask questions? Like, and true questions, not passive aggressive questions, not pointed questions, like true questions where, especially with other people, I'm truly asking because I want to listen, I want to understand, I want to get to know them and their ideas. I want to hear. That doesn't mean I'm going to agree with any of it. I can still be curious. I can still be curious. To be curious is going to require I jump to judgment much less quickly. Judgment's not required to have convictions, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to judge just to have a conviction and to have a stance and to have a belief or to even have an opinion does not require you to have a judgment against something else. Those two things are not like mutually like you can actually reserve judgment and have conviction. So curiosity. We need to be more curious about things. Like there's so much we don't know. There is so much we don't know. We think we know everything. We think we know everything there is to know about theology. We think we know everything there is to know about the Bible and faith and Jesus. We're just so sure that we're sure about everything. Like we've got the creeds and we've got history and our denomination and we've got this leader and that podcast and whatever. Like we're so sure we know. Guys, there's so much we don't know. If there's anything that history has taught us, it's that we will know so much more 500 years from now than we do today. And we will look back on this day and we will say, man, those people were idiots. Can you believe what they thought back in 2020? We'll know so much more. So why not be curious now? Because being curious is what enables us to be better. Being curious is what enables us to be more. Being curious is what enables us to be. The verse that comes to mind is like the verse in the Bible. I don't even we've got it memorized. I don't even need to read it. Micah 6:8 is the verse that I just always think of. He has shown you, O mortal, which by the way just sounds like a Bible verse that needs to be in a Marvel movie, doesn't it? Sounds like a Bible verse that Thor would quote. You know, this mortal body requires sustenance. My mortal flesh grows weak. Anyway, I digress. He has shown you, O mortal, Micah says, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to act justly, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly. Curiosity. Curiosity is what enables us to walk humbly. And it will set the stage for us to love mercy, which brings me to the second word that I just have been thinking about, which is empathy. We need to be more curious and we need to care more. Empathy is not connected necessarily to rightness. It's not like you're not just supposed to empathize with people that are right. Like you're supposed to empathize with people because they're human. Like it's part of what it means to love others. And because you empathize with somebody does not mean that you're condoning whatever their thought or behavior or whatever. It just means you're just recognizing their humanity. It's just an embrace. That's all that it is. It's just an empathetic recognition of the fact that they're human. And there's a certain level of respect that comes with just recognizing who they are, what they're experiencing in the world. Again, to withhold judgment long enough that you can ask the question, like don't we care? I know that that's not how you see it. I know that that's not what you experience. I know that you don't agree with that. But can't you, for just 1 second, stop just long enough to consider the fact that somebody else sees it differently than you, had a different experience than you, sees it, and you can still hold your conviction. You can still think what you need to think. You can still believe what you need to believe. But can you hold just enough empathy? Can you be curious enough to ask the question and have enough empathy that you can look at somebody and go, I see that. I hear that. I see you. I hear you. I understand you a little bit better. And it's okay. without having to rush to, and I disagree with you. These are two words, I think, two words in a Bible verse that can help us be intentional about undoing, disentangling this world of social media and the echo chambers that it builds in our life. Curiosity, empathy, and a little bit of a Bible verse. To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly. We want to put the world back together. It's going to require mercy and it's going to require humility. Or to word it another way, it's going to require curiosity, it's going to require empathy. A true caring for other people and a curiosity that causes us to listen in order to truly understand, so that we can truly see, so that we can show empathy. It's almost like this cycle, this catch-22, this kind of, which comes first, the empathy or the curiosity? And the answer is yes, because empathy feeds curiosity, and curiosity makes us more empathetic. And these are two things that for some reason in our world we have disincentivized. We have not rewarded. We have not lifted up as values and as virtues. We seem to reward the people that are loud and angry and spout their opinions and have the mic drop moments that make somebody else look bad. And I mean, I appreciate a good burn as much as the next person is, but it's just not what it means to love other people. It's not what Jesus called to, and it's not what the kingdom looks like. So, as I watched The Social Dilemma, that was what struck out to me. I have an echo chamber, and so do the people that are next to me. And when those aren't the same echo chambers, if I'm going to love them, if I'm going to have fellowship with them, and if I'm ever going to reach anybody outside of my fellowship, if I'm ever going to understand anybody else, I'm going to have to learn how to get curious, and I'll have to learn how to be a person of empathy. So that's my thought of the day. May God be with us as we seek to find what Paul called in Ephesians a new humanity. Could we find a way to tear down those dividing walls so that God can make a new humanity out of all of us in Christ? So, thanks guys. I look forward to talking to you the next time.